Talent identification, it's one of the biggest problems in business. It's a big problem in sports. I think it's a nice analogy that I can actually use between those two fields. And since I'm involved as an investor and also as a father of a 14-year-old aspiring goalkeeper in soccer, I am exposed to both fields. So I want to discuss talent identification, talent development, and sort of bring out some of my thoughts. What could be better? What is bad? What should be better, and sort of what's the cost of not doing it properly. This is not even wrong podcast. It's July 18th, 2021. It's a Sunday. There's no update. For the year, we are down 4.8%. The market's up 15.5% roughly. We're underperforming by 20.3%. So talent identification is one of the biggest problems, I think, in business. It's one of the biggest problems in sports. And the problem, I guess it's much bigger than we think, because we don't see what we could have done had we done a better job at talent identification. So it's one of those things that all we know is what's real, what we see. We see the companies or teams, or we see the results, but we don't know what we could have done had we had a better talent identification system. And to some extent, there are competing let's say organizations in sports. I want to focus on soccer, or in Europe football. Just use that sport because I'm pretty familiar with that part of the sports world. And in that field, you have the organizations. You have Switzerland, Germany, France. You have the U.S. You have Mexico. You have all these organizations that, in some sense, compete with each other. Now, when I say compete, I would say that there's a lot of copying, cut and paste type of stuff. So people kind of look at what other people are doing, and then they're trying to just mimic that. So, but there's still competition. So we can kind of follow that and then see, okay, this country is doing better than that, and so on and so forth. And in business, I think we have the same thing. We have, I would say, countries and cultures. It's probably more cultures than countries. So we have certainly a Silicon Valley culture, then we have a U.S. culture outside of Silicon Valley. We have industries, we have Wall Street, we have manufacturing. So those industries within the U.S. have different cultures. And then we have Europe. Again, there we have maybe tech in Europe is probably different than industry, and so on and so forth. So we can compare how they're doing. And the question, of course, is, well, what is it exactly we're comparing? What are the KPIs? What are the results that we're trying to compare these systems against each other with? And in sports, I think you can use things like the World Cup. You can use tournaments, Gold Cup, World Cup, Copa America. You can to a lesser extent clubs, because clubs just buy the best talent no matter where it is. But you have a certain nurturing of talent within a country, and you can then look at the national team and then compare those situations, and then maybe make some interesting conclusions. When it comes to business, again, what are we measuring here? I think one of the best measures is the number of IPOs, companies that actually go public, or wealth creation, maybe in a more general sense. So wealth creation, and I have to caveat this, wealth creation as a function of new businesses created by people. So when I say that, of course, these are raw measures. It's very difficult to pin things down on details. So, for example, if we have a huge number of IPOs in Silicon Valley, I think we can probably conclude that the talent identification system in Silicon Valley is better than in Germany, where we have very few IPOs. And this is not just because we have the IPOs, but it's also, in order to create a company and go public, you have to create talent, you have to identify talent, you have to nurture talent. So it's sort of, I think it's a good measure. And if we look at the measurements here, as far as business is concerned, I think it's very clear that Silicon Valley is by far the best, by far the most leader, the biggest leader in this space in terms of number of IPOs, and that has to do to some extent with the talent identification system of Silicon Valley. Now, how is talent being identified? I just came across a mention of Facebook and the Facebook talent identification system, which is called Bootcamp Headcount. So there's some sort of interview process. I think it's probably meant to sort of establish basic knowledge, basic familiarity with the domain of whatever you're looking for, let's say software engineering. And then there's boot camp, and then there's it's kind of a 2-3 week process where you go to boot camp, and then people from specific areas, product areas, they go around that boot camp and meet people and then hire whatever they need. So I guess if you dissect the system, you have sort of a 3-tier approach. The first tier is purely technical, where you answer these annoying interview questions, technical questions, whatever they may be. Similar process probably at Tesla, where Musk first and foremost wants to see if you know how to think. Asks you questions like if you go from left and then turn right and then turn back left and then you're back at the same point, where are you? And then the answer is I'm south of the North Pole or something like that. That's a pure conceptual thinking question. So this would be the first level. Then the second level, I'm now back in the Facebook world, in the bootcamp headcount world. So once you pass those interviews, you go to bootcamp. Bootcamp is a little bit more fun, but still very technical. Okay, this is how we solve problems. This is a problem. How about we code? Let's see who can code better. Let's see who can solve this problem. All that stuff. And then the third level is this headcount, when they're hiring people actually go to boot camp and mingle with people, and that's more the personal side, where once you establish the technical feasibility of a person, then you want to make sure there's a personal fit. So I would say that's one of the talent identification systems that is very popular now in Silicon Valley, partly because it's used by Facebook, and Facebook is very successful, not just financially, but also apparently Facebook people are very happy. That's what I hear. I can't vouch for that, but it seems like they are very happy, and there's some sort of alignment between what they expect to do, what they actually are asked to do, and the outcome of work and all these things. So the talent identification process in let's say in Switzerland, where I grew up, is none of that. It's almost exclusively based on things like degrees, to some extent a little bit of particularly in the early stages of so when you're young, since there's not much experience, it's really just your degree and things like that. The technical know-how is not as important, and that shows you already that I guess there isn't a lot of technical innovation also happening in the economy. That's why technical know-how is not as important, because people assume that whatever you learn in university is probably what you're going to apply in business, and the business hasn't moved much faster than academia. Also, the personal side of things, I would say, in Switzerland and general in Europe, isn't being emphasized as much. Now, I want to critique that a little bit here, having seen both systems. I myself graduated in Zurich and then worked there for a while, and then moved to the US to business school, then worked on Wall Street, and then went on my own. Now, I've seen both systems. I think Wall Street is a very peculiar hiring talent identification system. The way it works there is it's kind of a very rudimentary early stage form of the bootcamp headcount model. So you get first tested by technical know-how. In my case, I was working on the derivatives side on Wall Street, so in the sales and trading divisions of the derivatives desks, and that's where probably the most technical know-how was required. And I was asked and tested against technical know-how. Then there's some sort of boot camp. They used to call it different. They called it some rotation, where you literally rotate around the company. You check out different desks, and you're being nurtured by specific heads of desks in order to work for them. So it's a similar model. And I think Wall Street, particularly, this was over 20 years ago when I did that. I think it was a very competitive, know-how and creativity-driven model. Maybe things have changed today, but back then, to be able to actually make money with your own creative, unique approach was being valued, and people were looking for that. And I think, therefore, it's a similar approach that was used on Wall Street as is being used in Silicon Valley. Now, I think Wall Street has changed a little bit, because the creative aspect of Wall Street has diminished after the financial crisis of 2008. In a sense, people think that creativity in finance is a little bit like the sorcerer's apprentice. It's dangerous and counterproductive. I don't want to discuss this here today. I just want to say that as far as talent proliferation, talent development is concerned, certainly Wall Street has been better than many other industries. I don't know about other industries, but I would say that as a conclusion, as far as business is concerned and industries are concerned, the talent development side of things works the best when you have this two-layer approach of technical know-how and then personal fit. I think when it comes to sports now, I want to discuss that a little bit. The way it works in soccer is that you have probably a similar approach. It's just it has different names. So what happens in soccer is first and foremost you have to work yourself up within your local team structure. In a nutshell, you have to try to play for the best team in your local vicinity. That's because by definition you're still young. You're, let's say, 10, 11 years old. That's when competitive soccer really starts to kick in. And then you tend not to travel, or you certainly, parents will not make a big move just so you can go play somewhere else. So it's more of a local system. And the goal is for you to rise up the ranks in your local environment. Once you've reached the top there, you are being nurtured in what's called ID camps or scouting matches, where scouts come and see how you play. So if you're now, let's say you're in the best team in your local vicinity, you're going to be scouted by people who then know, okay, well, this is the best that this particular region has to offer. Let me see what they have to offer, and then you're being scouted. I think what's happening in sports in general is that you have a lot more on a performance and technical level of scrutiny, and I would say not as much the personal level, which is interesting, I think, because I think the personal level is almost as important as it is in business. So that's something that I think is not being paid attention to enough. Now, to summarize here, I think what I would improve, particularly on the sports side, is there is a little bit of a chicken and egg problem here, in a sense that, well, if you play for a good team, you're going to get better. If you play for a good team, you're going to have the ability to hone your technical skills. But the problem is, in order to play for a good team, you have to perform very well. And in order to perform very well, it is generally not a good idea to take risk. And then creativity gets kind of subdued and stuffed into this, like, this is how we want everybody to be, and everybody then becomes very conform. And this is a problem, for example, that Germany apparently has right now, where, of course, they are very good at being conform and conformity and all these things. So they have a little bit of a problem that they just don't have stars. They don't have creative, really eccentric, unusual players. They tend to have players that are all the same and just sort of shy away from taking risks. And I think while this might be a local problem for Germany, I think it's more than that. I think it's an interesting problem. How do you make sure that people rise up the ranks in the right way, so they get exposure to the right coaches, the right teammates, because clearly that does make a difference. It makes a difference if you have better teammates. It makes a difference if you have better coaches. My son just joined a team, one of the best teams in his vicinity, in his local vicinity, and he has much better coaches. He has much better teammates. There's more resources being devoted to his development. So all these things are good, but he's going to have to perform at a much higher level. And the question here is, how much risk is he going to be able to take in terms of creativity? And creativity almost exclusively comes with risk, because creativity, and this goes back to 0 to 1, creativity is a function of your unique approach to things. And if your unique approach to things is not always going to work, and your unique approach to things is a trial and error process by definition. So you have to find a way to try and error and at the same time also deliver. So almost like a little bit like a publicly listed company, like Tesla is in that position. I mean, Tesla is a try and error company. Tesla is a disruptor. We've spoken about this many times on this podcast. But they also have to deliver. They have to deliver numbers. They have to deliver, sales and profits and cash flows and all these things. People ask for it. Maybe they don't have to do it on a quarterly basis like a Johnson and Johnson or a General Mills, but there is certainly some pressure to deliver results, and this impedes creativity, because creativity requires this trial this unique approach on all these things that in my view are almost very often very difficult to reconcile with a steady delivery of results and performance. So how do you bridge that? I think that is one of the biggest problems in sports in general, in soccer, for example, in the US. I am not sure. I feel like this creative aspect is being neglected, and this goes back also to the culture of the US soccer. In general, the US soccer culture is a little bit more of a grit and work hard and try hard, an underdog type culture, and less of a creativity culture. So it's almost discouraged to be like that, and I think that's a bad thing. So let's now jump from soccer back to business. What's the situation in business? I think in Silicon Valley, certainly 0 to 1 has sort of led the way as a book, as a mindset, as a philosophy on which Silicon Valley management science and business culture is built on. I think Silicon Valley is doing a much better job in bridging this dilemma, let's call it, between performing, having technical know-how, delivering results, and also expressing creativity. I think this is part of the success story of Silicon Valley, to combine creativity, performance, and try and error. So these three these three processes, in my view, are the key ingredient that Silicon Valley is using for talent development, and therefore also for its own development, and it's part of the success story of Silicon Valley. This leads me to the other big sort of myth of Silicon Valley, which is that it's okay to fail. Now, having said that, Silicon Valley, as much as any other place in the world, discourages failure. That's not it. But if you fail, let's say it in the right way. So if the reason you fail is because of your try and error, and you worked hard and you tried to disrupt something, and you did what you could, and it just failed, then that's okay. That's an okay reason to fail. So I would say the way Silicon Valley encourages try and error and failure is, again, it's based on try and error. It's based on if you're on a disruptive path, which means you're going to create something which is 10 times better and 10 times cheaper, then it's okay to fail. And if the reason you failed is, let's say you took a technology risk that hasn't been solved yet, and you tried to solve it and you couldn't, those are okay reasons to fail. What's not okay, of course, is things like laziness, complacency, corruption, things like that, saying, well, it can't be done, all that stuff. I mean, that's certainly not okay. And it's discouraged as much in Silicon Valley as anywhere else. I would say that the question now, of course, is, well, why is it only in Silicon Valley? Why not elsewhere? And that is a big question that has been, I would almost say, haunting me for decades now, almost. Like, why is it here? Why is there tolerance for disruption, try and error, the ability to make mistakes? Why is there a question? Why is this tolerance higher here? Why are people almost requiring creativity here in business and still suppressing it in let's say, in Switzerland or Europe? This is one of the big questions that's been haunting me. I don't have an answer to that, but I think to summarize this episode, talent development, the question at the beginning was, okay, talent development, comparison between sports and business. What's the right way to develop talent? And the answer to these questions is, in my view, is that the best way to develop talent is to have a healthy dose of try and error combined with creativity, and to cross-check in the performance. If you can find this sort of trifecta of try and error, creativity, and performance, it's kind of like an optimization problem. If you can find that optimal point, I think then you have the best way to develop talent. And I think mindset is the weapon. I've spoken about this in the past. The mindset is the weapon. So if you have that mindset already as a person, as a company, as as a economic area like Silicon Valley, you're already more competitive. And mindset is the weapon, is so important that I've had episodes about this. I'm going to have episodes again, but just in this case, I think that it's a circle, and your mindset is going to help you develop your talent. Your talent is developing your mindset. I've spoken about this also in the white paper we have on our website, where we say that in order to grow creatively, you have to express freedom, and also growing creatively generates freedom. So it goes both ways. I think this is one of the biggest insights that I've had in the last few years, that in order to be free, you have to express creativity, and in order to express creativity, you have to be free. This is very powerful. This is a very powerful insight that I think also applies to talent development. It applies to the ability of people to developing better results, delivering better results, in the sense that we have, like I said in the beginning, more about creation in business or better results in sports. It requires that ability to be creative, and the ability to be creative, vice versa, also enables you to develop better talent. Thank you.